Welcome back. I'm Anjanette Levy, and you're watching Law and Crime. We are taking your questions for the next 2 hours on the YNW Melly case. He's the South Florida rapper on trial right now for the murders of his two friends, Chris Williams Jr. or Chris Thomas Jr., I should say, and Anthony Williams back in October of 2018. They went by YNW Juvie and YNW Sack Chaser. Court is dark today, as it always is on Fridays, and no trial next week. It's a holiday week, and so that we're not going to be showing the trial next week, unfortunately, but it will be back on July 10th, and we, of course, will have it covered for you. The co-conspirator in this case, YNW Bortlen, whose legal name is Cortlen Henry, was in court today for a status hearing. The judge denied his request to modify the terms of his bail to allow him to travel for work, so he remains on house arrest. So I'm going to ask you a question about that, Afi. We got people asking questions about Cortlen Henry since he was in court today. 400 MLB from Instagram asks, how was Bortlen able to get a bond and Melly wasn't? We were kind of talking about this during the break. He's pretty lucky to be out on house arrest.
Right. Okay. So thanks, 400 ML. So usually bond, what goes into a bond, there are a lot of factors. So I am assuming, not knowing their criminal history and their background, I am assuming that Melly likely had some arrests and or probably some convictions in his on his rap sheet in his history, and I'm assuming that Bortlen did not. It's likely that he had maybe just some small, maybe misdemeanors, if anything, in his history, and that's what led a judge to allow him on house arrest. But that's usually how it goes when you have a bond. There are a lot of factors that go into it. A lot of times, depending on your jurisdiction, a particular crime is going to automatically get a bond amount, and then it's up to your attorney to argue that these are the reasons why this bond should be reduced. So yes, he is very lucky to be on house arrest and out pending his murder trial.
Danny Jones from YouTube asks, will the same prosecutors try Cortlen? I'll answer that question. Christine Bradley was in court today. She knows the case inside and out. So yes, I would say she is going to be trying this case. Unapologetic Truth from YouTube. How is Bortlen at home on a double murder charge? Brad, how did that happen?
It's essentially the thing that was just discussed. First of all, his attorney is an excellent attorney. He's very well known in Broward, good friend of mine. Fred Haddad, and he was able to negotiate a bond for him because of the charges that he was charged with, because they felt that he wasn't the trigger man, and because of his prior criminal history, which I think was very sparse. So all those things went into whether or not he was going to be given a bond. I think at the time that the bond was being argued, there was the evidence that was being presented at his bond hearing was very difficult to kind of gel together in terms of, as you've seen during the trial, right? So there's a lot of things that are going on in the trial that you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't really gel. Some things are out of whack. And that's what happens at an Arthur hearing when you're moving for bond on this type of charge. They have to put on that evidence, and sometimes they don't put on every single witness they have. And even if they do, so you're proving proof evident presumption great, which is a very high burden. And even if they meet that burden, if the state meets that burden, you're still entitled to argue for a bond. And I think that's what happened in Cortlen Henry's case, is that it was the judge felt that they just maybe barely met that burden with Cortlen Henry. And then because he had no prior criminal history, significant prior criminal history, and they were offering house arrest, that he gave him a bond.
Well, let's keep in mind, Melly has a past conviction involving a firearm as a juvenile, and he did some time for that. You know, he fired a gun at people outside of a school. So there is that factor. He has a past history with guns. Amanda Johnson from YouTube. Michael, why not just say Bortlen was using the phone when the homicides happened?
You know, this phone stuff, it's always very interesting. And I think, Anjanette, what we learned from Brad a little earlier is when we talked about these pass-around type phones, we don't have people. Anjanette, we need people, because then you have somebody that handles these phones for you and passes them around.
I definitely don't have an entourage.
I don't have
Michael.
people. You need people. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a good question because it highlights what I always feel is the lack of credibility of this cell phone evidence. Who was really holding it? You know, what we know for sure is where they found it and to whose account it's attached. That's all we really know for sure. And so without some corroboration, I think these attempts to use this cell phone tracking and placement, it just doesn't really hold up for me.
It seems like, though, it's clearly his phone at the time of the homicides. I mean,
I think it's
he's
his
dropping
phone.
a pin to
I don't
Fredo
doubt that
Bangs.
it's his phone. I think it's his phone. But so what? You know, I need more than that.
Well, she tried to give it to you yesterday,
I've
Michael.
always
She
liked
showed
Mike.
400 pictures. Yeah, Michael. Brad wants you on his juries, Michael. All right.
Mike would be my foreman.
Yeah, exactly. Living Life with Danny from YouTube. Has anyone considered that Bortlen pulled over and shot both of the victims? Melly got out of the car, shocked, and got a ride from someone else. Bortlen changed clothes, then went to the hospital. That's actually a really good question. I mean, maybe Living Life with Danny Offie should be on the defense team.
Okay, so I want to get back to the fact that, so let's say the phone is his. What's after that? Show me what's next after that. The prosecution is going to have to do more than tell me that, like, the phone was there when the murder was committed. And I think Angela, what you said about this theory, I think that's exactly what the defense wants the jurors to imagine. Imagine many different scenarios. I think right now it's hard for them because of the reconstruction expert that they had on the other day. So that's why I think the defense, while they're having this trial delay, they need to really figure out what their reconstruction expert is going to do. And I hope they have a reconstruction expert because, again, we've already said the prosecution's expert was solid, and the scenarios he gave kind of put Melly there. They put him as the trigger man. So I think the defense, what they have to do is have a reconstruction expert continue to poke holes and shape plausible other theories that could have taken place that night.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, they want them to envision multiple scenarios. So I think they will have a reconstruction, their own crime scene reconstruction person come in and say, here are these possibilities. And then the state will pick that apart, I guess. All right, next question. Brad, since you're the guy with all the inside information, Danny Jones from YouTube, is it too late for Cortlen to plea?
It's like the Justin Bieber song, It's Never Too Late to Say Sorry, I think. No, I don't think it's too late. It's never too late. I've had individuals been offered pleas but turned them down in the middle of trial. I've had people offered pleas before a verdict came back. So it just depends on the case, depends on the prosecutor, depends on the actual charges. So no, it's never too late for that. He could take a plea in the middle of his case. I don't think that would happen. If he was going to take a plea, if there was going to be a deal, it would be in the middle of Melly's case. And I want to touch on something with the experts, by the way. The defense is going to put on a display of experts, and something that maybe I would imagine that nobody knows is that there is a kind of like a Facebook for prosecutors. And what happens is during a trial or after a trial or before a trial, they go on this kind of like Facebook and they ask other prosecutors, hey, did you ever have a situation like this? Or did you ever have a situation like that? And everybody kind of gives themselves advice. So you can go on this website. It's not for us. It's only for prosecutors. You go on this website and you ask questions. So I know the prosecutor and the prosecution team has been on this website and been asking questions about coming up expert witnesses for the defense and whether or not anyone has any information about them. Does anyone have any background on them? Did anyone ever take a deposition of them that they might have screwed up? And they have this network where they will provide each other information on different experts. And on the defense side, to our credit, we have something similar, but of course not as organized as they are. And they really have that nailed down where they provide each other information on different experts and different testimony of those experts. And that's been done on this case where I don't think anybody has ever even talked about that until now.
Interesting. That is interesting. And I think very smart. I mean, it would always be smart to reach out to people, in whether you're defense or prosecution, and say, hey, have you had this expert before? Do you know anything about this person? You know, and, you know, now that you're saying this, I think we could see possibly Sergeant Williams come back up in rebuttal then, possibly. So if the defense has their own expert and they put this person up, depending on how it goes, on cross or what have you, maybe they'll call him back up.